Good evening and welcome to the Legion Cantina. In today's episode, we'll be putting your lists against each other in a face-off, and then I'll get you to vote as to which of them you think would deserve to win. So we've finally got to the quarterfinals of the Legion Cantina Cup. We've ended up with, in Group G, Suppression going through. It was fairly close here. They got 33% of the vote, but yeah, bit clear of Rexikin and Assisted Rebels. And then Pure 501st took Group H very easily with 45% of the vote, leading to, and I'm not quite sure if this is deliberate, but it is kind of impressive if it is somehow deliberate from you guys, but every single one of the matchups is going to be Empire against Republic. We did have, I think, 13 or 14 Rebel, CIS, and Shadow Collective lists, all of which have now been eliminated, leaving us with 4 Empire and 4 Gar, who are all going up against each other, which is really interesting. So what I'm going to do today is go through and kind of pitch each of the lists against each other, talk about the sort of originality, which of them would win if they would sort of match up in a competitive sense, and the sort of overall theme. And then I'll put polls out, as I've done before, for each of these matchups, and that will generate our semi-finals. So without further ado, let's do Hothcore against Baked Beams. So these were sort of the first ones from the first video that put up. So on the left-hand side, we've got the winner of Group A, which was Hothcore, which veers some Naked Snows, then 4 Snows with the Ion and Imperial March, 4 E-Webs, and 2 ATSTs. I've had to cut up the lists a bit weirdly just to make them fit on screen, so some of the core will be separated from some of the core and things like that. Most of these, it's just worth imagining them side by side. Then on the right hand side, we've got Baked Beams, which I think is one of the kind of strongest in terms of like theme and an idea. Like the originality, I think, is quite fun. So Anakin, Bad Batch, R2, and then some Clone Infantry, 3 lots, and then 2 Saber class, both with the beam turret, one with HQ and one with link targeting array. So we'll go through it kind of one by one. So in terms of originality, I'm kind of favouring Baked Beams just because I haven't really seen any list like this against me on the table. This is kind of only my perspective on it. I think, to be fair to the list on the left, I also haven't come up against a list that's exactly like this. Maximum I think I played against is maybe 2 E-Webs. I can't really believe I've been against 3. So maxing out on 4 E-Webs I kind of respect. And then going for 2 ATSTs in... this could be Blizzard Force, I think is quite interesting. But yeah, I think I'm giving the edge to Baked Beams just on originality here, just because I think whacking 2 Saber classes along with Bad Batch and Anakin is just not something I've really seen before. If they were to match up competitively, I'm really not too sure about this. I think weirdly this is quite a bad matchup for Baked Beams, mainly because of the quantity of Ion that's available to Hothcore. And I think, unfortunately, those Saber classes are just going to have a huge target painted on them. And then I think the problem for Baked Beams in, like, once you get past the early turns is that both Anakin and Bad Batch are pretty order hungry. So then giving orders to the Saber classes on top of this is actually really tricky. Like if you're playing a Bad Batch is 3 pip or Anakin's 1 pip or something, like you don't get that kind of order flexibility. I do wonder if this list would benefit from Cody. So maybe if you drop R2, I understand why R2 is in here for the repair, but I wonder if Cody and then dropping some kit on one of the Clone Trooper infantries could be quite good, because if you had like the command control array or whatever it's called that gives you the coordinate, you could at least give some more consistency there. So that might be something worth considering over there on Baked Beams. But yeah, I do just think in this particular matchup, I'd probably give the edge to Hothcore. I think also there's the 12 acts for Hothcore along with the 2 ATSTs that are going to be quite challenging to deal with. Like, I think Bad Batch shooting at an ATST probably do okay. Anakin, is probably good for like 3 PS3, but the Hothcore one kind of has, like, the 2 ATSTs is a lot to get through, and while the Saber classes do have decent access to impact, I don't think they have the kind of sort of the threat necessarily to actually take both of them down. Maybe you could take one down, but yeah, I think overall Hothcore probably does just have the edge, despite the fact it's bringing the 4 E-Webs, which I think, well, a bit of suppression here, I guess, can't hurt. Although you are, Courage 2 on the whole, and then making them panic with that Courage 3 from Anakin would be quite tricky as well. And then the theme, I think these are both very close. Like, I actually quite like the theme of both of these. Hothcore is obviously solid. I like the 5 Snows. I like the 4 E-Webs. But as I say, I think committing to that, full access to beam, I think is marginally better here just in terms of theme, but I think they're very close. So this is actually, I think, a really good matchup, and another one that is, I think, going to be really, I hope it's really close in the polls, but I've clearly just been way off with what I expected people to vote for here, because I thought there were some really decent Rebel and CIS lists that have been eliminated, which I'm not salty about. Moving over to the second quarterfinal, which is going to be the winner of Group C against the winner of Group D. So this is Let Me Down over here on the left-hand side, which is a Obi-Wan Cody list with a Saber class as well, some arcs and some offs. A fairly standard clone list, but with obviously Obi-Wan and Cody sprinkled out along with that Saber class. Then over on the right hand side we have Only Snipes, which is every single unit here has access to a sniper or something that basically enables it to deal damage at infinite range. So you've got the marksman on the Riots, the snipers on Iden, Din with the Anban, and then Delmika on the Snows, and then the basic snipers on the Scouts. In terms of originality, I have seen more lists like Let Me Down than I have Only Snipes. Like, this is full commitment to the kind of sniper thing over there on the right hand side, sorry. So I think I am going to give the edge on originality to Only Snipes, just because in the previous edition of the game, i.e. before 2.6, whatever it is we're calling it, I think you would have seen more lists like this, but in this version of the game, it is very rare to see something like this. Obviously, I think it does lose out on the competitive side, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I think this is decent on originality. Then obviously on the competitive side, and giving the edge to Let Me Down, you could run a list like Let Me Down at a tournament and you would probably do okay. I think there are obviously a couple of changes you could make. I think with Obi-Wan, you don't need burst of speed, and I do actually approve of the barrier reflexes combo and tenacity if you need it. I think maybe seize initiative over tenacity, but obviously I appreciate he's likely to be damaged from Guardian and you maybe have some control over that, so maybe it is worth it. But I think if you're taking tenacity, you might just want to sprinkle in burst of speed, just for if you are planning to do damage, maybe do that burst of speed, but nothing hugely wrong there. Clone Trooper with Engineer is fine. You've got a good Engineer target with the Saber class. It is only repair 1, so that's not huge, and I think maybe you almost need maybe more threat in this list. So I wonder if you maybe drop the Clone Trooper Engineer, and that gets you to 37. I can't remember if I think 5s is 40 off the top of my head. So maybe grab some points from elsewhere, maybe dropping the scanner on Cody, for instance. But if you could get 5s and the shotgun into one of those Clone Trooper infantries and give yourself kind of another serious threat in your army, I think that would be a really big deal. So that might just be one of the only changes I would make here. Arfs with the Arf Trooper duo, that's fine. Yeah, nothing hugely wrong there. I think they're a nice complement to the ARC Troopers personally, and this is a really solid way to run ARCs. Targeting scopes are into the fray. I think both are valid, so nothing wrong there. And then Plo Koon, Beam, Link targeting, armor piercing. Bearing in mind you got Cody there as well, feels really good and gives you a bit of anti-armor. So I think this is like a really solid list. I think, as I say, just that one change to maybe try and find a few points to upgrade Boyle into 5s is maybe the only change I would make. But aside from that, I think it's really solid. And then Only Snipes, this is not a competitive list. I think it has a great turn 1, it has a solid turn 2, and then you lose the game, would be kind of how I would assess this. The problem is, like, when every unit is wanting to shoot on turn 1, some of them are not going to be able to do that super effectively, and especially if your opponent brings on 2 or 3 units early behind LOS blocking, you could have 3 or 4 acts on the board that are then not extracting their maximum value. And I know I'm nitpicking here in a list that I don't think is meant to be super competitive, but to be honest, if you are going to run this idea of everything having a sniper, I don't know how much more competitive you're making. Like, there are small changes you can make. Like, for instance, I don't think Ida needs situational, so you can maybe put those points somewhere else. And then also, I don't think the Shores necessarily need dug in. You can put them in if you want, but again, I think maybe those points could be better spent elsewhere. Aside from that, though, I think this is about as competitive as it can be, so I'm not going to critique it too much, but Let Me Down is just an inherently better list, I think. And then finally, theme-wise, I'm giving it to Let Me Down. I think, again, you could make an argument either way here. I think, the Obi-Wan Cody thing, there's a theme there. And, yeah, I think this is the kind of list that people see run more regularly. And, they'd say the theme of Obi-Wan and Cody. But also, only Snipes, like, it is a theme in and of itself. Like, the characters don't necessarily fit together super thematically, but at least there is like a common thread between them. And I think this would be quite a fun list to play. Obviously, you're not going to win many or any games necessarily, but yeah, I think it is a fun list, and I think it'd be an interesting one to run into because it's just a completely different challenge to like every other list you run into at the moment. So yeah, a good one to bring to a fun tournament near you. Moving on to the third semi-final, and this is going to be the winner of Group E, which was Yoda over Anakin, and then the winner of Group F, which was Imperial March. So 6 Gar on the left-hand side with all your standard stuff. Obviously, Yoda marginally cheaper than Anakin, so gets you a few extra bits. I don't agree with force push on Yoda, especially when he has disengage on one of his command cards. I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think it gains you that much. Personally, I'd rather see like a barrier, a reflexes, or a mind trick or something in there just to maximize that use of. Obviously, force push is decent use of Master of the Force too, but yeah, I think it could be better spent. Inspiring Presence is fine, could go improv, whatever, but yeah, that's okay. Trusted Agent on Rex, solid, giving that when you need that order on Bad Batch, I think that's really decent. And Recon Intel, no issues here. And then, yeah, Bad Batch, and then the 3 chunky clone squads with the shotguns, Ahsoka 5s, and then the basic clone commander. So good surge access. You're pretty tough. Yoda's going to get you a long way, and, Luminous Beings is going to give you some really decent survivability. So, yeah, it's a very standard 6 Gar list. I'm not the biggest fan of this one, having made it through to the quarterfinals necessarily. I think there were better options maybe to come through from Group E, but I think it actually won fairly convincingly. So clearly, I don't know what I'm talking about. And then right hand side, Imperial March. I think I critiqued this one for not having all the Imperial Marches it could have, but yeah, it's a very sort of stereotypical Empire list: Krennic, Vader, Din, load of snows, 2 snows, shores, deaths, mortars, range troopers. I think it's really decent, and I think the only issue, if I remember off the top of my head, we're getting to more recent ones now, I think, was I don't necessarily agree with the range troopers here. I think I'd take the range troopers out and put some scouts in and then spend the points elsewhere, because you're dropping 90 points on the range troopers and they're your only support unit. And I think that would just mess with your order control a bit too much. So even throwing in, an extra snowtrooper squad, for instance, with the points you've saved, might be a valid way to go. So yeah, and then also on the snows, I would look for a way to take the ion guns. So I think it's actually might have been what I said before. So if you go range troopers down to the scouts, you can then afford to take the ion guns on the snow troopers. I think that is a really good upgrade, because the ion guns and the snow troopers with that steady feels really good. So that is the only change I think I'd make here. Spotter uplink on Din, I think doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You don't want Din to be really hanging around that close. I think you either want him in melee or you want him far away. So personally, I would dive him in and get him engaged in melee. So I think that's 3 points you could spend better elsewhere. But kit on Krennic and Vader is absolutely fine. Kit on the deaths and shores is absolutely fine. And mortars, if you're planning to give them orders, then link targeting makes a lot of sense. So yeah, no major critiques on either of them, just a few changes that I would make. So in terms of originality, I'm giving it to Imperial March. A 6 Gar list is not particularly original. This is a more original way of running it, in that it doesn't have Anakin and it does have Yoda, so there's bonus points there, but I still give the edge to Imperial March. Then competitive wise, I think Yoda versus Anakin is probably the better of these two, just because I think in the right hand 6 Gar is probably better than what we're looking at on the right hand side, but maybe with removal of Anakin does just take away a bit of your threat. So maybe I think it's closer than you might think, but I probably will give the edge to Yoda over Anakin. And then theme wise, I think probably Imperial March takes it. The 6 Gar thing doesn't really have much like theme to it. Like, I don't think it really fits together super well, and like, Yoda, Rex, and Bad Batch just as a combo doesn't seem to have a huge amount of theme, whereas Imperial March does have maybe a little bit more going for it in that regard. So yeah, I think again a fairly close one, and I don't know which of them is going to win. I think Empire list seems to have like overperformed generally, so maybe we'll see another Empire win here. Then the final ones from the most recent round of voting, it is Suppression against Pure 501st. I really thought we were going to see some Rebels coming through, but sadly not to be. So over on the left-hand side with Suppression, it's Krennic, Vader, Callus, Deaths, 4 lots of riots, which I approve of, 3 dewbacks, and some more deaths with the DTF-16. Gives them compel. So yeah, again, kit on Krennic and Vader is absolutely fine. I personally would just drop Barrier for Choke. I think I mentioned that previously, and Inspiring Presence is also completely fine. I think if you wanted, you could save the improv on Callus, spend those points elsewhere, but you don't have to. I think it's okay. And yeah, then dewbacks, if you want tenacity and you want comms jammer, I think that's perfectly valid. Again, I think what I said previously was if you did sort of drop some of the kit, there's potential to maybe squeeze in an extra act, but you'd have to drop really quite a lot of kit to get there. And I understand the comms jammer and the tenacity combo on dewbacks, especially with new ways to motivate them from Vader. So yep, makes a bit of sense to me. And then yeah, the KXs I think are perfectly good. I would like to see maybe one ranged option in here. So basically this list doesn't really shoot very well, and the lack of the flame, even the flame rifle, or the RT-97C or whatever it is on the dewbacks, you are relying on just kind of like sprinting forward in this list, and you don't really have like a huge amount of reach necessarily. So I think there is definitely, you could put in some longer ranged options like some ion snows, for instance, or taking those rifles on the dewbacks just to give you a bit more threat early on. Pure 501st is just a very typical 501st list. So you've got Anakin with pretty standard kit, clones with the shotgun, 2 lots of arcs with the medics, and then 1 arc with the medic and into the fray, Rex with improv, and 2 lots of the AT-RT laser cannon. Again, nothing hugely wrong here. The only changes you could make would be dropping the laser cannons on the AT-RT, which they don't always need. But then I don't really know where else you need to spend the points here. I think you can take Ahsoka in 501st, I'm fairly sure. So there might be ways to give the shotgun charge, for instance, if you drop laser cannons, but then you'd have to drop more kit. And I quite like the medics in here. You've got obviously some really good medic targets. Yeah, it's just that it's a very classic 501st list, and I think does well on the theme front, for instance, and reasonably well in a competitive sense. In terms of originality, I'm probably going to give it to Suppression just because I approve of the 4 snows and the triple dewbacks. I think it's maybe slightly more original than just going the pure 501st route, but I don't think either is necessarily super original. Competitive wise, I think it would be pretty close. I think it is just the lack of the ranged options on the Empire list, which is making me mark it down there. And I think, to be honest, this the pure 501st list could just handle things probably a bit better, especially when things get up close and personal. Like, if these 2 lists match up against each other, they're both going to end up quite close. And I think in that scenario, the Gar list probably takes it. It's probably just got a bit more survivability and probably a bit more hitting power. Although obviously Vader is going to do Vader things, and Vader into red saves does feel pretty good. So maybe Vader will be able to carry here, but I would probably give the edge to pure 501st. Then theme-wise, like I said, I think the pure 501st is going to take it here. It's just it is a very thematic list. It's in the Battle Force. It has all the stuff you'd want a 501st list to have, so I'll give it the edge there. So there we go. There's my 10 cents on these lists. As I say, polls will go up straight after this video, and then I think I'm just going to do one maybe each day or every 2 days or something directly afterwards, and then we'll have our semi-finals. Thanks to everybody who's voted in the polls and stuff. It's been really interesting to see like the kind of list that people are favouring, and turns out the stuff I've said in the video doesn't have that much bearing. So it is really interesting to see, and yeah, it's very likely. Well, I was going to say it's very likely we get Empire Gar. It's certain we'll get Empire Gar, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not we end up with 4 Empire lists going through to the semi-finals. In terms of other videos and stuff that are going to be coming up soon, I've started a Tour of Duty campaign, which I've really been enjoying, and we'll try and produce some content on that one, talking about my first games and how my rosters and things are progressing. My initial response to it is really fun. The post-game sequence feels like involved, but it doesn't feel like it's too taxing in terms of time, and I think a key approach is to not try and game it too much, because having looked at some of the combos, I'm running a land speeder, for instance, there are some pretty crazy combos you can start to pull out very quickly. So I would just make sure you're playing with like-minded people in terms of matching those up. In terms of points levels as well, my initial inclination is actually to stay quite low on the points level, because I think I kind of like those lower points levels where sort of the power feels kind of very differently placed compared to normal Legion games. So yeah, that's just something to think about for when you're putting your games together. But yeah, that has been fun. Otherwise, we've obviously got this sort of ongoing content. So I'll try and get this sort of done fairly soon. I think try and get the next video out next week, probably this time next week, and then we'll have the final probably the week after that. And then yeah, it'll be very interesting to see who wins. Obviously that the 32 list that started, one rising to the top, will be really interesting to see. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, etc. And I will see you for the next one.